You're listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Well, I'm so excited about having Emily back for the third time on this podcast.
She's one of my favorites. She's just like such a good person. I just like her as a person so much, but she's also so smart and so with it when it comes to job search, everything that I just appreciate her greatly.
So I have been collecting questions for about 6 months now that have been coming in through Dear Rachel. Sometimes clients too will ask me questions, and I've just collated some because I'm like, Kristen and I aren't recruiters. Okay. This is the part that we don't have the requisite experience to say, once you know what you want to do, here's the technical details of how to go about getting it. I don't know. So
I will say we were validated in our approach by what Emily said, but we still don't profess to be the true experts on the nitty-gritty job search strategy.
No, absolutely
Emily's
not.
Whole realm.
It's not what we like to do either. Of all the things, that's not what we would prefer to do. So I've been collecting questions that I thought were more suited for Emily and wanted to have this kind of Dear Rachel episode plus Emily. Dear Cremily is what I decided to call it. But I decided that would make a very good title because no one would understand what we were talking about. But that is the conceit of this episode, is that it is some curated questions about job searching, pivoting, changing industries, getting paid what you're worth, how to figure out, what kind of job to search for if you don't really know what to call it, those types of questions that come up all the time. Just throw them at someone who knows what she's talking about. And it was great. It was a great conversation.
Of course, she had spot on answers for all of them and some nuggets of hot tips that we did not know going into this. So if we didn't know, I expect many of you don't know because we've been doing this work for a while. And even I'm still surprised.
Yes. So you're going to want to take notes and write some of her tips down. Especially she gives like a few websites that are really valuable. Write that crap down. This will come in so handy at some point. Okay. Before we read her bio, I do want to remind you guys that we are in the midst of taking on new clients. We do that a few times per year. We'll get into the details and just remind you again at the end, but we do talk a little bit at the end of our conversation with Emily about the difference between when do I need someone like her and when do I need someone like me and Kristen? Because depending on where you find yourself in the journey of like, I need career direction, you could work with us and that would make more sense, or you could work with Emily. And we kind of spell it out so that if you're not sure, listen. And by the end, I think you will be.
And if you are teetering, maybe talk to us because we have helped people just help them determine, do they fit better with what we're looking for or Emily? And we might refer you to Emily if we think you're at that point, or we might say, no, this makes sense. So we can help you clarify if you're really not sure, but we do get a little bit into that. So, okay. Here is Emily's bio. You might have heard it before. It's been a little while.
You probably heard it back in February when we last had her on the podcast. Go back and listen to her episode from February because that was really great too.
Okay. Emily Liou is a career happiness coach and job search expert at Cultivite, who helps professionals make wildly successful career transitions even when they don't have all the skills, experience, education, or go-to network. As a former recruiter and HR professional for Fortune 500 companies and Silicon Valley startups, she knows exactly what allows professionals to stand out, get visible, and get hired. Emily strongly believes life is too short to not wake up happy on Mondays and has been featured in LinkedIn's top 10 voices to follow in career and job searching for 2022. As the creator of her ultimate job search course, Happily Hired Formula, Emily not only provides the strategies to make any career transition possible, but also coaches them through building a positive self-image to go after their biggest dreams. And she does have a free masterclass, which we talk about at the end and we link to in the show notes. If you want to check that out.
Yes. I highly recommend that you do. And you follow her on Instagram at Cultivite, which I also link to in the show notes if you're not good at spelling. Okay. I hope you guys get a lot out of, I think it's a no-brainer that you will get a lot out of this conversation, and we will be back at the end. Hi, Emily.
Hey. Thanks for having me back.
We're
Yes,
so
welcome.
excited to have you back. You're one of a exclusive group of people who have been on 3 times.
I feel like a veteran.
You really
You
are.
are at this point.
So in the intro, we already kind of explained why I wanted to have, you back. And Kristen and I have been referring to this in our mind as Dear Kremily, because it's a Dear Rachel with Emily.
Oh, I love that. And I have to say, I love that our company names kind of coincide with each other too. Like Clarity on Fire, Cultivate Your Life, Cultivite.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
the same thing
Oh,
going
you got to
on.
think about a celebrity business.
Oh, no.
name. I don't know.
We're a trio.
We're a trio.
It's a complicated love triangle now.
A throuple.
Yes. A business throuple. And I a power throuple. Okay, Kristen, do you want to dive into our first question?
Yeah, we've got lots of questions for Emily, so we're going to jump right in.
Yes.
The first one is from Rebecca. She says, I'm worried that a robot will take my job. More to the point, I'm worried that I don't have the proper skills for a job of the future, quote unquote, like coding or software development or whatever.
Yeah, I think it could be scary to think about how fast technology is evolving. And sometimes it's natural to think like, oh no, I'm going to be outskilled or replaced by robots. But I think that we have to remember humans are irreplaceable no matter how fast technology is evolving. So I was actually thinking about this the other day at Whole Foods, scanning things on their self-checkout with a computer, but then an attendant had to come over because something was labeled incorrectly. So no matter what, I think when I think about humans and what they bring to the table, like relationships, creativity, somebody to actually design the technology, implementation, instruction, listening, troubleshooting, like these are things that will never be replaced by a human. I think for Rebecca, though, she may be worried about like supply and demand and possibly like pay outlook in the future. So I don't think it ever hurts to upskill if that's something that you want to do. Like you're truly passionate about coding, you can absolutely like learn that skill. And the fewer people who know that skill, the more you're going to get paid, right? It's kind of like on the street, there's a doctor, you need a doctor. Not everybody can come and rush to your help, but chances are if you need a babysitter, most people can maybe fulfill that role. So I think it just depends on like what is important to them, but I don't think they should be concerned like my job is going to be replaced.
Yeah, I think that when we think about like the Industrial Revolution and how jobs have evolved in the last 100+ years, we have turned over we went from horse and buggy to the car to airplanes, and we haven't reached teleportation yet, fingers crossed. but we've also gone from like no internet to internet, and think about how many jobs that made possible.
Hmm.
And I'm sure it did make some obsolete, but humans are adaptable. We learn something else. So I don't know that it's so much about a robot will take my job. It's that, okay, I might need to adapt, but there will always be a job for me.
Very true. I was just thinking about like one of the oldest professions is teaching, right? And we still have teachers today in the traditional sense, but there's also with technology, Coursera and Udemy, or, these teachers or professors have had just to adapt to maybe pre-recording some lessons and delivering it. But at the end of the day, like they're still the ones that are going to be asked questions and being able to give their expertise and guidance. And so I think no matter what the job is, there's always going to be room to continue growing and upskilling and just adapting in a new way, like Rachel said.
And again, you can't replace humanity. Even AI does not actually replace a real human having opinions and having ideas and being a creator. There's things that you're always going to be able to bring to the table that no machine can, and remembering that, and maybe even getting excited about that, because sometimes the machines can take over the parts of the jobs we don't like to do. Maybe you didn't want to ring up all of the items at the grocery store, but you want to be there to answer questions and help people solve their problem. Great. You get to do the human part, not the machine part. So you can think about that as what are the parts maybe I'd love to automate, and what are the parts I want to bring my humanity into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And just a side note, there's a website called onetonline.org, and they have something called the Economic Outlook, which is basically their predictions of how many jobs there's going to be for different professions, and actually categorized under rapid growth. Just fun fact, I was looking this up. I only got through like A through D, just skimming. There's a lot, but on that list was for rapid growth is actors. So actors will never be replaced, obviously. Actuaries, bartenders, even dishwashers. And I was like thinking, yeah, like there's big industrial dishwashing machines that somebody still got to load them or make sure they're like properly input. I don't know if anybody wants to be a professional dishwasher, but I'm just saying to make a point that these jobs that seem archaic or, like non-technical, they have a bright outlook.
Mm-hmm. Machines can maybe make the job easier. You don't have to wash every single dish. All you got to do is rinse them off and throw them in a big machine.
Yes. So we're friends with technology. We like technology.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. So this happened during a coaching session between me and one of my clients, where she asked me, where's the line between being honest and spinning in a job interview? So what I told her is, I think it's about how much you know about the job and whether or not you want it and are excited about it. So if you know you're intrigued by something and you're intimidated, but you want them to consider you, maybe you spin a little. If you're unsure, and if it can meet your needs at all, and you need to get clear, then you might need to be more transparent. But I might be wrong. So would you weigh in on that, Emily?
This is such an interesting question. And it's such a good one, because I think a lot of job seekers go into their interviews questioning if they're oversharing or if they're omitting. And to me, I think about like true versus truth. Like we all have our own perceptions. Like you and I could be looking at the same exact situation happening. And because of the lens that you're looking through, you might interpret one thing where I might interpret something completely different. And so in the interview, I think the fine line between true and truth is like whether you would be able to sleep comfortably at night or peacefully at night based on what you share. Because I think in a way, we're all spinning. Like spinning is just like an art form that's sometimes necessary when you go into an interview. I was actually just thinking about a Simpsons article or Simpsons episode where Marge becomes a real estate agent for the first time. And her boss or mentor is like, so what do you think about this house? And she goes, it's awfully small. And he's like, how about cozy? This house is cozy, right? And so sometimes you have to spin something in order to sell something. And in the job interview, you are selling yourself, right? So if it's like, I don't know, just an example, like if an interviewer is asking you, are you proficient with Adobe Photoshop? And you've never used Photoshop before, but it's a huge part of the job. And on day one, like you don't know how to navigate past like opening the window, then that's probably better to be honest. Because there's also something very liberating about being honest. And you can say something like, well, I haven't had as much experience with Adobe Photoshop, but if I were to obtain this job, this is how I would come up to speed, right? So there's like times to be really honest, and then there's times to kind of spin a situation, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I think you're making a really good distinction, Emily. There's a difference between something is true, but you are quote unquote spinning, putting a frame around it. You're framing it in a certain way versus being untrue. And that's, we're never saying spin an untruth to make it sound like a truth. That I think is when you don't get to sleep well at night because you feel out of integrity. Or maybe you get the job and then you're completely stressed out because you're not prepared for the job. But if something, I like your house analogy from The Simpsons. If a house is small and you try to spin it as being big, that's misleading. If you call it cozy, that's a different way of framing a small house to make it feel more inviting while still being truthful.
100%. Yeah. And I was just kind of thinking about when people would feel like they can't be honest during an interview. And I think for me, I always tell people to be as honest as possible because then you're also attracting the right employer. But, if, for instance, you have a weird phrased question where there is something negative, I think this is where most spinning happens, right? Because we don't want to go into an interview bashing another person or another company. It just reflects poorly on you. But spinning could be focusing on like the positives of what it is you are looking for. So one of the questions I get a lot from job seekers is, how do I, like, if I got fired, how do I answer the question of like why I left? And you may not want to openly state like I was fired because I didn't like working more than 40 hours a week, or I didn't like my boss. But a way to spin that might be, I really enjoyed my time working in XYZ or doing XYZ. However, in my next role, what I'm really looking for is, and then you can explain, I really value work-life balance, or I really value a mentor, like a boss who really takes the time to listen. And so there's ways to spin negative into positive without, again, putting a highlight on all of the negative. And it just makes you able to be authentic without putting red flags into that interviewer.
Yeah, that's a really good point and a good distinction. And there's no way of, isn't there a book that says to be human is to sell, right? Or something along those lines?
To sell is human.
To sell is human, exactly. So part of this is there are facts and then there's always going to be stories around them. And you get to tell the story you want to tell about the facts. But don't mislead anybody, and you don't have to be so honest. Like you get to choose how transparent you want to be, and to a large extent, Emily, I think you're right. If you are quite transparent, you can opt in or opt out of the right environment, and they can clearly discern, are you a right fit for us? But you don't have to highlight the negatives while you're being really transparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think another thing that I want to note, because I have a lot of job seekers I'm thinking of that are like really honest. And one of the things when we talk about selling is being able to be convincing and almost like storytell and illustrate what it is you're talking about. So, like, I have a lot of candidates when I talk, or a lot of job seekers, when I talk to them, I try to ask them to quantify their job, right? Because there's a difference between saying I project managed as like a generality versus like I project managed projects that were up to like $300,000 in budget. Like you're really painting a scope or a picture. And so a lot of times job seekers tell me like, well, I don't have the exact number. I don't want to like embellish or lie. But I think it's okay for job seekers as they're selling themselves to paint a picture in the ballpark. As long as, again, you can go back to asking that question, can I sleep peacefully at night sharing this information? But like if you were to go into an interview and say, I project managed about 6 projects a year, that's going to infinitely make you stand out more as a candidate because, again, you're really being specific, but again, not tying it into like, I have to be precise and exact with this number. If they fact check me, I'm going to be in big trouble. So I think, again, that goes between the fine line. And I just want to give people permission to just check in with themselves. Am I being honest to the best degree that I can in this situation? And is this really hurting anybody? I think it's a good second line check.
Yeah. Really good questions to ask if you're feeling unsure. Okay. Question number 3. This is a little bit of a longer one. There's some context here. So it's from Holly. I've learned that there seems to be a huge difference in pay between service industry jobs and professional jobs. So while I may do a lot of project management, how that is valued in a professional job versus how it's valued in a service industry job seems to be very different. My company hired someone to help with sales, and the salary listed in the job description was over twice what I make, even though I actually do that work. I find myself really resenting this discrepancy, especially because I used to hold professional jobs, although my current, more service-based job is definitely closer to my passion. Is there a way to push back against this difference, or is this just part of a larger societal problem?
Well, first, when I heard this, I almost want to empower this person to ask for a raise because she mentions that she's basically doing the job and she's seen that this person is getting paid twice as much. And it sounds like she's a very loyal employee in the sense that she's been there for a while. She really enjoys what she's doing, which is important. But I want to ask, how has she advocated for herself during her time here? And not to get like too deep into this, but there are different pay philosophies out there for different companies and industries. Companies could be known to lead the market, which means like they pay top dollar, top compensation package. They could also lag the market, like meaning they may not pay as much upfront, but there's like possible stock options or an upside in the back end, which is typical of startups. And then a lot of companies just try to meet the market, which is, okay, here's the averages, and we want to try to pay competitively to that. So for somebody who is in kind of like a non-tech, like Fortune 500 type company that feels like they're getting paid on the lower end, but they've been in their role and their company for a long time, they're really valued, I would ask, when is the last time you asked for a raise so that you can meet the market demands? Because so much has changed right now with inflation, companies having a really hard time attracting and retaining talent. It could be worth asking. And what I would really do is try to ask yourself, is my company doing well overall? Like, does it make sense at this time? You don't have to wait for your annual review, doesn't make sense right now to ask for more. And then if this person has been helping with sales, like either you're generating income for the company or you're saving revenue or saving cost, really, again, it doesn't have to be exact number amount, but ballpark it and make that ask, because chances are they probably want to retain you. And if you have the market data to back up why you deserve to be paid in line with the rest of the market, you may be able to get that if you advocate for yourself. And then just really quick, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the average salary increase at an organization is 3%. So if you meet all your KPIs, you're doing a good job, chances are you at that annual raise, you're getting a 3% increase. But when you find a job externally and you're really leveraging your existing offer, the average salary jump is actually 20% of your salary. So that's why, like, a lot of people intentionally in their 20s, they may decide, I'm going to switch jobs every 2 years, 1 to 2 years. And it's called leapfrogging your salary in recruiting terms. But again, if you are in the same company for X number of years and they have not given you a base salary adjustment outside of the annual raises, I would ask, because I'm almost hearing there's like this limiting belief here. Like, in order to move up the ranks, I have to find another industry, or I have to increase my responsibilities and my title. And I don't know how true that is in this situation.
That's a good point, because I'm definitely hearing the resentment in the question, and that might be warranted to some degree, but that's also a cue that you probably need to be asking. So I'm really glad that you, I wish we could get an answer like, have you asked for this? But my hunch is that might have been part of the question. She might have said, hey, I already asked one and I didn't get one. That's a little bit of a different conversation. But if you haven't at least asked, this is a really good opportunity now that you're seeing somebody coming in and doing the same kind of work at that company for a higher pay. And you're also able to do some market research and see what other people are making to make a really good case for it. In which case, the resentment might be partially because they haven't recognized you ahead of time and already done that, but you might need to speak up to make that more likely. So good thought, Emily.
And another like limiting belief I see here is, if I'm a leader, I won't have work-life balance. And I don't know how true that is either. I mean, assuming this person wants to like manage or mentor others and take on those responsibilities, I would say, like, how can you do that and put in boundaries in place and create that work-life balance that you want and be that example you want in the workforce? I personally have had a lot of managers where they visibly worked far less and I was working more as kind of that line person. So I just want to ask, where does that belief come from? And is there any evidence of the contrary? If, again, it's interesting to you to be a leader.
I just want to fill in the gaps with a little more context here that I think will make this, I don't know, conversation more interesting or spicier or something, which is that when this person actually originally submitted a question on Dear Rachel many, many months ago, and this was an update. And so she actually gave us the very specific niche that she works in, which I literally never heard of, which is senior move management, which is what it sounds like. It's helping older people like relocate and I probably downsize and deal with all of the logistics of getting from their house probably to some sort of, I don't know, facility or something like that. The impression I get from her question is that she's one of the people who's probably managing the moves and like helping with the logistics and doing all of that hands-on stuff. And then she's comparing the people who are on the sales team and what they're getting to what she's doing. And it's like, her job is complicated. Her job probably involves keeping a lot of plates spinning. And yet, because of the industry or because of the way our world works, we think that that's more replaceable than someone who's good at selling, because selling is like a skill that apparently we value higher. And so I mean, I think it's okay, Emily, if the answer to that part of the question is like, yeah, them's the breaks. Like, there are industries and niches that are going to pay more than others. And if you want to work in one, you might have to be okay with making less money. But like, I do think it's an interesting question of like, do I just like accept that? Like, accept the fact that like there are certain jobs that are just never going to pay you that much? Or is there ever a case to be made for those types of jobs paying more?
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of like a sales versus account manager, if you will. Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Like one is operations and there's no like commission or bonuses in place, even though they're making the world spin and fulfilling the happiness and deliverables for the person who brings in the sales. Whereas like sales, yeah, it's seen as, well, you're out there building the relationships, you're doing the presentations, you're gaining their trust, you're actually bringing the revenue in. And so we have to compensate you higher for that skill set. I don't know if like one is fair or unfair. I think it's just different skill sets being seen differently and maybe rewarded differently. But that being said, I think it ultimately depends on what is important to that person, because we can always create whatever role that we want, in my opinion. Like if you want to you just want to be an account manager, but you want to be paid higher for that. Well, maybe there's another position out there for you at another industry or company that allows you to still do the same thing, but maybe it's just valued a bit differently. Or is it like, well, I actually do want my hand at the sales and I can see that this is being paid even more handsomely and I have an interest in learning this skill set. Maybe you can create like a structure for yourself at your current company where if you bring in X number of deals or you help assist X number of like deals closed, maybe you get a percentage of that. So I don't know if that answers the question, Rachel, but I think it makes sense that different companies and different roles just have different salaries. And I think that's where the pay transparency and the like arming yourself with that knowledge is helpful for you to career map out what's most important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a mix of realism and then also don't get to a point where that becomes cynicism. Because once it becomes cynicism, you're not thinking, is there anything I can do to change this? I think once you get to the point where you're like, I guess I can't change it, and you're mired in resentment, you've gone too far. Because it's probably not true that you can't potentially ask for a raise, or that you can't pitch a role that they might actually value to a degree that they don't value what you're currently doing. But there's also a reality to like, yeah, if you want to be, for example, a public school teacher, guess what? You're going to have a salary cap. Like, you're never going to make $200,000 a year as a public school teacher. I regret to inform you. If you want to make that much money, you are going to have to switch industries. And, like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Kristen and I ask this question a lot now. What do you want your job to do for you? So if you're happy working in the niche you're working in, you just want to be paid more, there are probably ways to ask for a raise or, pitch a new role or something like that. But if you're resentful because you're being paid not enough and they're not going to budge and this is the way it is, then you might need to take your skills to an industry where you could apply them and they could be valued, and you could do something very similar and all of a sudden be getting paid a lot more, because that does happen for sure.
Even your public school teacher example is a good one. Teaching is a skill set you could bring in multiple different contexts. If you love the public education system and you feel really strongly, and that's a value of yours to contribute to that, then yeah, let's see what the cap, let's really see and push what the cap is for what you can earn in that arena. But if what you really love is teaching, and what you really love is teaching kids in particular, or teaching a particular subject, you can open up your viewpoint on where is that skill valued outside of the arena that I've been in. And you might have a very, very different earning prospect.
These are such great points. I love them. And yeah, that's something that I want all job seekers to know, is that you have transferable skill sets, no matter what context it's been in. Like senior move management is very specialized, but it is like the core skills around project management, account management, operations, logistics, like all of these things can be applied to, like, say, an Amazon, who is probably going to pay you a bigger salary just because they lead the market. But yeah, it really depends on what, I love that question you have. Like, what do you want your career to do for you right now? What's the most important areas that you value for your career?
We'll touch on a couple of the things that have come up in that part of the conversation a little later, because we have some questions at the end that are, I think, a continuance of what we've just been talking about. But for our next question, this person didn't give us a name, so that's fine. We don't need to know their name. They say, I've taken the passion profile quiz so many times and I'm always firmly a thriver. I'm 29 and I'm in a support role, which for the most part feels right for me. And I really like the people I work with, but my salary hasn't really budged at all since I finished college. And I can't stop comparing myself to my colleagues who make quite a bit more than I do, but are way busier or in a more leadership role than I am. Can you dive a bit into how a thriver can advance without becoming, or perhaps more accurately, being stuck with the gut fear that I have to be a leader or taking on a lot more responsibilities and hours than they think they can handle without resenting it? Thank you. Okay, Emily, to remind you, thriver is the kind of person who really doesn't want to combine their career with their passion. Like, they're the type of people who really, really, really value balance. And honestly, their passion is usually outside of work. So work is just the vehicle through which that provides for them to live their best life outside of work. So they're the type of people who ideally would just like to clock in and clock out. Like, they don't have a ton of aspirations to climb the ladder. They're not like, oh, I can't wait to go to work every day. They're like, if I won the lottery and never had to work again, I would be totally fine with that. Bye. I think you already answered part of this question with what you said earlier, which is, if you're in the same company, your salary bump's going to be really small. If you go do the same thing somewhere else at a different company, 20% increase every time you go somewhere else. So, I mean, any other thoughts on this particular question?
Yeah, it is actually really similar to the last one, kind of talking about different industries or the role, like climbing up the ranks within. I think if anything, I would just also add, like, not to discount your proprietary knowledge you have with an organization. I'm sensing from both of these listeners that they are quite loyal to the companies they've been at. And I just want to share that the turnover cost to replace an employee is typically 3 times their salary. When you think about, the lull in between, the ramp up, the training, even like hiring somebody sometimes can be really costly and timely. And so in this case, I would still ask them to advocate, because it sounds like they like the job that they're in, they like the place that they're in, but they're just feeling like they're behind, maybe income-wise or earning potentials. So I just want to ask, again, have you advocated for yourself, and not to discount like your proprietary knowledge that you have, especially if you've been with the company for so long, you understand the processes, you're that person who's maybe even training new people to come in or mentoring them. Like, if your salary isn't fluctuating with that or increasing with that, then maybe this is the time to ask, where you don't have to make this complete 180 pivot or take on greater responsibilities if that's not your cup of tea.
And I think you answered this in the last question, but because I know it's not just this listener, I hear this all of the time, there is this belief out there that if I'm going to keep advancing in my career, I'm going to have to become a manager and lead people, or maybe both. And I might have to get really busy and work way more hours. And to a thriver in particular, that is really unappealing. So managing people is a big source of pressure and responsibility that can make a thriver feel less engaged in their job. And they also, if they want to clock in and clock out, they don't want to clock in for more hours. They're like, I want to clock in for the amount of hours to do the job, and that's that. I don't want to take on more work and get busier and have to work more. That's not the point of this for me. So I want to just like really drive the point home that that is a limiting belief. And I want to get your particular thoughts, Emily, from you've worked with enough people on advancing their own careers. What is your thought on, do you really have to become a manager or get really busy and take on way more work if you're going to advance and make more money in the long run?
Absolutely not. I completely agree with everything that you just shared. And sometimes it's just, is my salary keeping up with the market, because things are changing and evolving, and you could still be doing the same amount of hours and same amount of work, but maybe you're even more efficient because you've, had so much experience with it, or you're leveraging new technologies. And so I think what's most important is making sure you're empowered with knowing what exactly you should get paid for your job today. And I would even say, if you're a thriver who's been in that role for a long time or with the same company, look at the upper percentile. In a lot of the market salary ranges, there's like the low, the median, and the high. I would aim for the high. And, at the very least, maybe you land in the median to high. But one thing that could be really helpful for this listener is going to like linkedin.com/jobs and typing in their title, and then for location, putting in Denver, Colorado. And this is because Denver or Colorado as a whole has to put the salary that they are paying for each job description. So you don't have to guess, like, what is this job paying? What is this title? Take a look, see if you can find comparable types of companies or industries, and just see, like, what are they paying in Denver for this exact title? And then what you want to do is go to bankrate.com and use their cost of living adjustment calculator. So you can type in that salary that's inputted into Denver, Colorado, and then type in the city that you're actually being payrolled in, and it'll tell you what that equivalent salary should be, whether it's higher or lower. And then just compare it to what you're currently being paid right now. And I would say if it's lower, this is your time to have that conversation and really see, the objective reasons why you, I don't want to say deserve, but yeah, you deserve to be paid at market rates. And again, I would aim for that upper percentile, just knowing that in any negotiation, there's a little bit of a give and take. And you always want to aim higher and land somewhere that you'd be acceptable.
This is brilliant advice. These are like hot tips. I love this. Okay. LinkedIn.com/jobs, search in Denver, Colorado. I love that Colorado has to be transparent. They've just agreed we are for transparency. Love that for Colorado. And as for that other one you mentioned, bankrate.com, bankrate.com. Okay. That is such a good tip. Thank you. I am bookmarking this, like for sure, using this with clients.
Hot tips from Emily.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Next question is from Christina. I know what I like and don't like about my current job, but I don't know what job title to pivot to based on that. What are your thoughts?
More hot tips that coming at you. Okay. First, I want job seekers everywhere to know that there are probably over 50,000 titles and growing since the Industrial Revolution. And different companies can be doing the same exact thing, but calling it different things. And so I think what's really important is to not get so hung up on titles, but instead being able to describe like the job family it belongs in, along with the actual roles and responsibilities that you would be doing. Because again, you could be calling an account manager something, but at another company, they reference it as customer success manager. So just some practical tips. I think it'd be helpful to come up with a target organization list. Like, these are organizations that I am interested in, I'm curious about, and I would just want to know, like, what are they calling their employees? And so what you can do is leverage LinkedIn. Two ways of going about this. One is LinkedIn, and just typing in the company name, start to look at their org chart, essentially. You know, you may see somebody's currently a project manager. Great. Let me learn more about that and see like what that title is about. What does their background look like, et cetera, et cetera. The other way of going about it, though, is taking a look at their website and really studying their job descriptions based on the family that they're in. So, for example, if you know you want to work in tech, maybe like the best company to type in right now would be google.com, because they are hiring like crazy. They have a lot of openings, and you might see a lot of different job titles that you've never even heard about. And this is where I would really get curious and just start reading them. It's great this person knows what they like and dislike. You can really start to see, okay, this is how they word it. This is the jargon that they're using. These are the words that they utilize. And any titles that are piquing your curiosity, I would just like put into a master list and start to like see if you can cull some themes. You know, like actually a lot of these are repeating the word account management or customer success. You know, like you can start to find those patterns. And then same thing, if you're really interested in, say, nonprofits, maybe like the leader in that right now is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Take a look and see, you know, maybe they have fundraising roles that wouldn't exist in a tech company. But you can start to really piece together a list of potential titles to start studying. And then the second, I think, best thing you can do is have those informational interviews. And this is really serving two purposes. One, getting clarity on what it is you want. But two, it's networking in the process. And this is really where those coveted jobs come from, and jobs that you feel I don't have the full experience in. That's okay. That person you're speaking with probably is impressed by you, or, you know, has a favorable impression that they're willing to put in a good word, and you're going to obtain that job without having the full experience. So I would say coming up with a short list, finding the organizations, like really targeting that, and then trying to see how you can learn more about that particular company. And then as you're having informational interviews, you can, because you've done all this research, you can start describing what it is that you do without putting a label on it. And even asking that person internally, I'm curious if you know like what title this is in your organization. And that'll kind of help. You know, most people like to be helpful. So they'll start to say things like, have you considered looking into XYZ? Or have you heard of this title before? And that's just going to allow you to get clearer and clearer through the process.
Kristen, are you impressed?
Oh my gosh.
Well, okay, hold on. Kristen, are you impressed with us? Because we tell people to do a lot of what Emily just told them to do.
I'm feeling very validated because I know Emily is the pro in this, and we've been following her guidance without
common sense. We've been using common sense.
We don't know all the cool tips. We didn't know about Denver.
I didn't know about bank rate, but
no.
I did know about the master list of like, keep a list of things you find intriguing. Like, I obviously love the idea of starting first with organizations you find intriguing, and then, or even if you don't find them intriguing, you're just like, they're a huge employer, let me just see what they call things. And then maybe that'll give me some ideas of what to search for. Great. Like, that's a great idea. But keeping a master list of like, oh, that's an interesting job title, or I don't love this job. I wouldn't apply for it, but there's something about a couple of the way they phrase their bullets that I like. I want to keep track of that, because 100% what Kristen and I have seen too is that patterns start to emerge in the way things come up in terms of like how things are phrased, but also just patterns emerge in terms of like what you keep being drawn to that will teach you a lot about what you're actually looking for. Yeah. So, and this is such detective work. Like, I want to emphasize how much of this is not like people want it to be logical and linear and clear. And there is no way to make this process completely logical and linear and clear. Like, it requires like some legwork and some detective skills and some process of elimination and experimentation and being open and kind of being more like a scientist, as opposed to, as in like, I'm observing and I have a hypothesis and I don't know what's going to happen and I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm just going to see what happens when I search this thing, or what happens when I talk to this person. Like, that's how we make progress, is doing that stuff consistently.
Yeah. And I don't think there's a wrong way of doing it either. Like, I think a lot of job seekers get so attached to a certain outcome. Like, I talk to job seekers all the time that tell me I have no idea what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look. Have you been job searching? Yes. Okay. What roles have really excited you? Or like, what companies have really piqued your curiosity? And again, those patterns will start to emerge. And for anybody who's feeling like, I don't know what I want to do, I really urge you to look back at the last 6 months to a year of your job search efforts and really seeing like, what have you been pulled towards? Because the answers are there. But I think a lot of times people may not want to admit what they want, because it means like they're actually going to have to do something about it, or like take action, or maybe they don't fully trust and believe like this is possible for me right now. But I think that absolutely, if you have the clarity in mind, you can reverse engineer your way into it, no matter what your situation or background is right now.
Yep. Yeah. If you know what you like and you don't like, you know enough to start looking. And I'm going to, I don't know if you made this up, Emily, or if this is something that I just hadn't heard of, but I like the idea of de-emphasizing titles and emphasizing the job family, because that's the pattern. That's how we're describing. The more you see jobs and see what's attractive to you and what's not attractive to you, and you're starting to see patterns, that's going to lead you toward a family of jobs that might have a million different names for the same thing or variations on the same thing. But the family is moving you in the right direction. Don't get so hung up on the specific title, because nobody's going to call it the same thing anyway. But I'm going to start using that term with my clients. We're going to look for job families, not titles.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they are really vague about what they want to. They'll say things like, well, I really like problem solving, or I really like helping people. Great. That's like every single job out there. Like, what department do you want to sit in? Because problem solving and marketing could look very different from problem solving and legal. Right. And so I think that can really help you narrow things down too, is like who or what do you ultimately want to impact? And then this is really helpful too, to look at your skills and what your background is in, that allows you to immediately step into that, while maybe you want to make a career transition, but you don't fully have, the background for it. You can start to put in an action plan in place as well to bridge that gap.
Well, speaking of skills, our last question is about that. So also from Christina, she asked, how do I search for new jobs or careers based on skills I have instead of job titles?
Okay. So going back to job families, you can go to onetonline.org, and they have incredible tools to help you with refining realistic job titles based around your skills. You can even search by your interest, your abilities, your education, or like the types of jobs that you're interested in. So if you don't have a specific title, you can absolutely start looking there for, these are my skills. Here are like all of the types of roles and jobs that can fit into this. But I would also just encourage you to type in those skills into, say, LinkedIn.com/jobs or Indeed, and start to again see if there's anything that is coming up that you want to explore more of. I think when you're doing skills, though, it really helps to type in technical skills into like a job board. Otherwise, if you type in like problem solving, again, every job is problem solving. It's not going to really narrow things down for you. So yeah, I would say if you have technical skills, you want to search for job board route might be great. Otherwise, a good starting ground could be ONET online.
That's great. I'm already seeing how my clients are gonna. I did not know about ONET, so that's gonna be.
I love
another hot tip.
I love that whole URL. It's so redundant. onetonline.org. We got a net and an online and an org all in the same thing. But
like,
okay.
Tell you what ONET stands for. I think it's like occupation
network or
online.
something. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. It doesn't matter. If it works, it works.
Maybe the net they're talking about is like collecting everything, like a fishing net.
Yeah.
I like that better. We're going to go with that.
See, I'm spinning right now.
Yeah, people, what they really want is kind of like that. They want a compendium of every possible job they could possibly have. And they want to scroll through it and be like, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that. Like, go for it. If that's really what you want to do, sure, you can do that. This is actually leading me into a question that I think that we should probably answer last, though, which is, how do you tell the difference between when you need to work with someone like me and Kristen or when you're ready to work with Emily? Because I think that if you don't know what you want, you're going to find job searching incredibly frustrating, and you're going to think you're doing something wrong or that you're broken. There's a lot of baggage that career stuff brings up that you need to be able to work through before you're qualified. And I don't mean with your resume, I mean like emotionally qualified for the right job. I don't know how many times we've said that like the perfect job could land on someone's lap, but if they're not ready for it, because maybe they've got a lot of people pleasing issues, or maybe they've got a lot of like mommy daddy baggage that they're not even aware of, that they're projecting onto their boss, and that they're just going to take that to the next job and they're going to ruin it. Like they're going to ruin their experience of the perfect thing because they're not actually a match for what they say they want yet. So much of the work Kristen and I do is getting people to the point where they're actually ready for the thing that they most want, and then can articulate what that is and understand not just what I bring to the table, but what I want to get out of a job. Like, I most want a job that enables me to feel really creative and very free and flexible, and I have a really good time. And, you know, I have a core group of people that I love working with. Great. From there, it's easier to then coach someone into like, all right, well, when have you felt most free in your life? Or like in your current job, when are you feeling most creative? And we can kind of like detective, you know, like we drill down and we can detect what are the themes and the patterns that are coming up that we can use to more clearly articulate over time. Oh, I think I'm looking for something more in this industry. Or I don't think based on what my values are and what I'm looking for, that this industry is actually going to be a match for me. So we can get closer and closer and closer and closer until such time as it actually makes sense to work with Emily, because then you can kind of bridge the gap between, all right, I think I know what I want, but I need help with like the technical process of finding it. That's how I would describe it. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. I think a lot of job seekers out there self-sabotage. And the way that I like to explain it is like, if you think that you're an average candidate, you're going to get an average job, right? Like a C candidate is going to get a C job. I think about one of our clients, our shared client, Wangane, and I think she was a perfect example of like how and when to know like when you're ready to work. And I think she, if I can recall correctly, like she didn't really have a ton of clarity. She knew like she was unhappy in her job, but she didn't know like exactly where she was targeting or like what was most important to her, and really uncovering, like you mentioned, like some of those patterns or like those belief systems that were holding her back from saying like, I deserve to go after XYZ. And so I think if anybody is in that state right now where they want to do really deep exploration and really tap into like, who am I? Which when I hear about like, I don't know what I want to do, I hear like, I don't know who I am. Right. And so I think that would be perfect for Clarity on Fire. I tend to like take on people who have a general sense of what they want. Maybe they're not like crystal clear, but like they at least have a direction and they're ready. Not to say like they don't have insecurities or imposter syndrome or fear or self-doubt or limiting beliefs. Like all of that is, of course, going to come up to the surface anytime you're stepping out of your comfort zone, which making a career transition definitely is. But a lot of people who come to me, they're pretty much in this boat of I'm motivated to make a move. I have a general sense of what I want, but I really need help. I really need help with the strategic part of instead of just applying online and not getting the responses I want, how do I actually brand myself and package myself? And what do I need to do and say to start getting more interviews and more offer letters? How do I like negotiate my salary package once I'm at that final finish line? So yeah, I think if I were to really look at my program, I think I'm more of a consultant in the sense of helping out with job search strategies. We do coaching in there as well, but it's not the level or like the in-depth one-on-one that you guys provide in, okay, let's just lift the entire hood and see what's in here.
That's a good distinction.
Emily, thank you so much for coming and just blessing us with your hot tips. I have all these websites now that I'm like, well, I'm going to bookmark these.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, for anybody out there who's looking for career happiness, I think they've stumbled across the right podcast. And I'm really excited to see where people land. Like I always tell people, your current state is not your forever state. And I know job searching, like I have some clients who call it job search depression. It could be really grueling, but I'm glad that you guys are able to serve a resource and inspiration to them.
It is really depressing. Like, I mean, it requires a lot of patience and a lot of trust. And that is why I think that you shouldn't have to do that part alone. And I'm really glad that you're out there holding people's hands, because it can be a very just painstaking process. But to take some of the doubt out of like, am I doing this right? At least when you're working with someone like Emily, it's like, well, I know I'm doing it right. I just can't control the timeline of how things work out. But at least I'm not wondering, oh, should I have worded that request for an informational interview a little differently? And then my whole life would have been different. Like, oh my God, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, I think taking out the guesswork gives a lot of peace of mind to an already stressful process.
Oh, yeah. So, Emily, if people have self-opted into, kind of give them an idea of where they're at and whether Clarity on Fire or your work would be a better fit. So if they decide, I think I'm ready for some Emily guidance, where's the first step you would direct them to?
You can check out our free on-demand masterclass training. It's cultivateyourcareer.com/training. And I essentially just walk you through my whole philosophy and framework behind modern day job searching. So you're not wasting time just applying online and updating your resume and cover letter for like the umpteenth time, but you're actually starting to have conversations, which is a big thing for me. I believe you should have more conversations than applications if you're really targeting a dream job. And by that, I don't mean like the perfect job. It's just a job where you feel this is something that will light me up. I get excited by this and I want this particular target versus just any job that falls in my lap.
Yep. The official title of your masterclass is How to Land Your Dream Job with More Income and Impact Without Applying Online and Wasting Time.
Thank you. It's super long, so no wonder I didn't memorize that at the top of my head.
I also linked to that in our show notes, just so that they know they can very easily go click on it and access it from there. Well, I don't know that we've ever had someone on the podcast 4 times. So maybe Emily will, I'm sure at some point she might break the record.
We'll just have to call this podcast Cremly.
Yeah, from now on.
I'm into it.
Well, thank you. I hope you guys will leave a comment if, any part of this resonated with you, or if it answered some of your questions or just gave you some aha moments. Love to hear. And Emily, we will talk to you inevitably the 4th time we decide to have you on this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
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 Okay. Well, if you heard that and you went, okay, I definitely need to work with Kristen and Rachel, not Emily, because I don't even know what I want yet. And I'm definitely afraid that if the perfect thing were to land in my lap, I wouldn't recognize it, and or I would kind of fumble it, then great. We are happy to talk to you about the possibility of one-on-one coaching.
And if you haven't heard our last couple of episodes, quick overview of what that means. We don't take on clients all the time. We specifically open up enrollment periods 3 times a year. We are in one. We're actually right smack in the middle of one, which means not all the spots are still available. And after our enrollment window ends, you may or may not be able to work with us on your timeline, is all I'll say. You can always fill out a waitlist form. But if you want to answer some of those big questions we just laid out, I think Emily said it really well. When you have the thought, I don't know what I want to do, there's usually a deeper question of, I don't really know who I am. And if that's the question you want to get an answer to sooner rather than later, now might be a really good time to dig into that process. And we have a couple of coaching options available. We'll link to the page where you can read all about our coaching process and the options and get a little bit more familiar with the logistics to see, do I want to have a conversation? Am I serious about jumping into this? And am I serious about doing it now? In which case, fill out a form and let's talk.
You have 1 more week, technically, though, again, I don't know how many people have already filled out that form. We record these in advance, so the sooner you do it, the better for you. We have multiple options. We've got 3 months of coaching. We got 6 months of coaching. We can talk to you about the difference. And link is in show notes and or clarityonfire.com/coaching. And honestly, isn't everyone's biggest fear just wasting time and or making the wrong decisions? So the point of coaching is to stop wasting time and stop making decisions that aren't right for you, that aren't aligned for you. If you would like to do that, if you would like to wake up 5 years from now and your life look very different than it does today, not even 5 years from now, how about 5 months from now? I mean, the trajectory of change can be very, very, very quick when you finally just do something different, when you interrupt your pattern. But if you don't interrupt it, it's going to keep persisting. Patterns are really, really good at just doing that.
But let's interrupt it intentionally instead of in reaction. And that's what coaching is really going to help you do. Instead of reacting to, I don't like this, let's just quit it all and do the opposite. Let's interrupt the pattern in a way that's going to get you where you want to get on the other side of it. That's what we're really good at, that process.
Life will interrupt you if you let it. You can wait for some chaotic thing to happen.
Yeah, not usually in the most
to force you.
Pleasant way.
No, you can choose to interrupt your own patterns, which will be a lot more smooth and more pleasant than waiting for life to shake you up. And then you're forced to make a change.
But you don't have...
Better to decide to do it.
Yes, but you don't have to decide what to do alone. That is one of the biggest values of coaching, is having someone guide you through, what do I do? And how do I know it's the right thing for me? And how do I even know what I want in the first place? And What am I going to do when I inevitably get really scared of doing the thing I said I was going to do? How do I not sabotage myself? That's the stuff we know how to work. We know how to guide you through that. We do it all the time. We've been doing it for a decade. You don't have to know how to do all of that. Nobody teaches you that in school. We got your back.
No, just like if I were looking for a job, I wouldn't be like, I would be so relieved to have someone like Emily to just tell me, write this, do that. Coaching in this sense is a little more complicated because it's not so much, it's not as easy as follow these instructions, but it is follow this process. Let's ask these questions. Let's explore this together. It's messy, but it can be contained.
I don't know the right action steps for you, but I do know the right process.
Yeah. Which will then get us clear on what the right action steps are.
You can rest assured. One less thing to have to figure out and decide for yourself.
Okay. Once again, link is in show notes or clarityonfire.com/coaching. And we will be happy to chat with those of you who are ready to do it or serious enough about talking about it. And we will be back next week with, it's another special week of podcast programming because we are doing a bonus book club on the book Burnout, which we should have announced earlier this month. We never do that. Just never, ever remember to announce the book that we're reading.
I think one time we remember to do it. Usually we don't.
One time. Out of like 4 years, we remembered to do that. We're reading the book Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And I think we have so much to say that we're going to split it into 2 episodes. So look forward to 2 conversations about burnout and obviously how to recover from it and not be subject to it.
I think quite timely.
Next week.
What a timely topic.
Is it? I think it's an evergreen topic.
It is.
It's always
Burnout's
relevant.
Getting more and more and more prevalent. So let's just get right into it. So we'll be back.
So whether you've read it or not, I don't expect you to have read it by then. But if you want to, great, go ahead. If not, that's fine. You can listen to us talk about it and it'll be like you read it.
We'll give you the spark notes.
Okay. All right. See you then.
Bye.